3, 2, 1. White camera's up there.
Okay.
So we'll start off there. And apologies if I mess this up because you're my first guest.
Oh, no
we'll
problem.
See how it goes.
Yeah, no problem.
This is Rinks Around the League. Of course, you're just with Gene, I did it in one fucking take.
That's okay. I fucked up a lot when I worked with you.
That's true.
This is just payback.
Jeff Nash has been to every single NHL rink in the league. His second season started up this fall with interviews with local hockey icons. And Jeff joins us now.
Being over there renewed my passion for hockey. I loved it over there.
I like this. This is nice. I like the setup that you've built here. It's got this really high-end Wayne's World vibe, which I'm completely into.
All right. Good show today. All right.
I'm currently on my way to Rexall Place, or what used to be called Rexall Place, to pick up a couple of Coliseum seats.
So yeah, here we are. Rexall Place, picking up our seats.
Oh, are we here?
Oh, okay. All right. Oh my God. 5 for 5. Yes. Wow. Incredible. And the #1 rink around the league is Little Caesars Arena in Detroit.
This is a great setup, and
Thanks.
I tell you what, it's very impressive. For a cameraman, you make a good interview.
That does it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Hello everyone, and welcome to Season 2 finale livestream show, coming live from the Rinks studio in Edmonton, Alberta. I'm your host, Jeff Nash, and I'd like to welcome viewers who are tuning in during this crazy time around the world. First off, I of course have to give a special shout out to all the first responders who are putting their safety and lives on the line every day. But obviously during this time, more than ever, they're risking everything to try and make sure we're all safe. So from first responders, firefighters, ambulance, paramedics, doctors, nurses, custodians, all medical staff, a huge thank you for all that you're doing. And also a big thank you to you, for you at home. Hopefully you're watching this during self-isolation and you're doing your part in containing this dangerous virus. Also want to send a shout out to the digital team at Oilers TV. Yesterday they received some bad news, so I hope everybody's staying healthy during this difficult time, and I hope you're back at it very soon. Since it's basically impossible to line up guests anymore to come into the studio under the current situation, I thought I'd try something new and do a live show with all my former guests to catch up with them. So I'm hoping over the next hour or so, my guests and I will provide a little escape for you from reality. I'm hoping things will run as smooth as possible. Bear with me as I'm a one-man show doing everything tonight. We'll all go on this crazy journey together. That is my first Rinks Around the League live show. On tonight's show, I will have a message from Sportsnet's Gene Principe, live via the web from TSN 1260 host Tom Gazzola, from the Calgary Flames, Ryan Dietrich, former NHL Sean Bell, and from Second String Leather Company, Joe Messina. We'll be giving out some prizes, and also we'll be taking questions online and on the chat beside me. I'll do my best to keep my tabs on everything on there, but it's a little tricky for me. So now to catch you up to speed on what's happening with Rinks Around the League, this will conclude formally Season 2. My first season, of course, was going through and reviewing all 31 NHL rinks. Feel free to explore my channel, maybe see rinks that you've been to, or maybe some that you've never been to. Who knows, maybe it'll change your mind and make you consider going to that rink once everything kind of resumes. Season 2 saw guests on the show. I bought some seats from Rexall Place, and I invited guests to come on to talk about their experiences with Rinks Around the League. I even ended the show with a quiz where I threw some rink-related trivia as well as some goal horn challenge at them. Some did better than others, but it was a way to loosen them up and have a bit of fun. Of course, feel free to head over to my channel, binge watch all the episodes. We tackle a wide variety of topics, and who knows, you may learn something new about my guests or rinks around the league. So, grab your favorite beverage, sit back, hopefully this all goes well and smoothly and enjoy the show. Now, my first guest episode of the season was definitely with somebody who was well known to Oiler fans. He's the host of all Oilers broadcasts on Sportsnet. He's well known to the Oilers faithful for his funny props, and who can forget his puns. Now, he was willing to come on the show, but due to technical difficulties, we couldn't quite connect for the show. Oh well, thanks anyways, Gene, but maybe we'll have him on later in the future. He did send me, right at the deadline, a special message. We'll play that a little later, but I'll play a clip from my interview that didn't make it to air. Oftentimes when I record these, they usually last about an hour, and I have to trim the fat, as they say, to make the episode 20 to 30 minutes. And in this clip, I asked Gene, when he's interviewing sports legends, if he takes a moment to enjoy his work. Have a look. So in interviews like that, and even Connor now, and whether it's Sidney Crosby or anyone really of superstar status, are you dialed in work mode all the time? Do you ever, because you've been doing it for so long, do you ever take the moment to take a half second and be like,
right,
look, this is what I'm doing today?
You know, I remember interviewing Sidney Crosby for a first time, and he was, 18 and new in the league, and I was quite excited. So that would have been about 14 years ago. I was like, I get to interview Sidney Crosby, and he was great. Like, he wasn't bad, but for him it was, for lack of a better term, just another interview, right?
Yeah.
Like, he just walked off the ice and he sees some guy from another city who wants to ask him 2 or 3 questions, right?
Yeah.
Since then, we've developed, I think he kind of knows who I am just for longevity. And I know the last year in the old building, just a real quick Sidney Crosby story, he had done, it was supposed to be him and Connor facing each other for the first time.
That's right.
Connor was injured.
That's right.
So we went from the Oiler dressing room to the Penguins, and Sidney had spoken a little earlier than I expected. So we got there, and I kind of missed the meat of the interview. And he sort of knew that, and I joked about it. But I ended up getting enough. I was good. So then a couple of minutes later, I'm in the dressing room, and he kind of pulls me over, and I'm thinking, Sidney Crosby, what is he? What happened? He goes, come here. I'm thinking, I'm trying to think, what did I do, right? So he goes, why don't we do that interview? And I'm like, oh no. I said, Sidney, I'm good, right? Like I got it. He goes, no, let's do it. So I ended up getting a one-on-one with Sidney Crosby, about him and Connor McDavid. And so it was a real kind of far cry from when I started and first interviewed him.
Right.
I've had the pleasure and the honor of interviewing Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods and Wayne Gretzky. Those for sure. You take a moment to think about it and to realize, these are guys, not so much in Tiger's case, he's younger than me, but many of them are people that I watched growing up, and those that I just have watched them grow up. It's you think about it and you think, here I am, Edmonton kid, dad's a carpenter, mom, made drapes for a living, Italian immigrants who came over here, and I get to, rub shoulders with some of the greatest sports personalities ever in the world. And so on days like that, you do want to take a moment to go, for your own sake, not to boast to anyone else. It's just about you enjoying that moment and to really have it ingrained in your brain so that in the years to come or when you retire, you think back to moments like that.
All right, that was a small clip from my episode with Gene, and like I said, we had some technical difficulties, so we weren't able to quite connect for the show just in time, but he did send a message for me. Let's check out what Gene had to say.
Hope that you and your family are doing okay, and bidding adieu to a good first season of your new show. It was a pleasure to be on it and get a chance to talk. My set, well, you can see part of it, not nearly as good as yours. Yours is, I shall say, professionally done. Mine is makeshift. A couple of Oiler jerseys, a scarf, and away we go. Despite the fact I've had lots of time on my hands, I still haven't gone to get a haircut. I guess I can't get a haircut anymore. If I'm going to get it done, it'll have to be at home. It's been it's been quite a few weeks, since this has happened now. I guess 3 weeks technically are closing in on it. That night at the arena when the Oilers were playing the Jets, everyone was talking about playoff positioning and who is going to get in the wild card. Could the Oilers push for first? And I certainly felt like Edmonton had as good a shot as Vegas or anyone else to finish first in the Pacific Division. And got kind of eerie that night when the NBA canceled their season or suspended it. And then the next day the NHL put their season on pause. So it's been a strange time. What have I been doing? Working out of my home studio, doing some online interviews, and just doing some social media videos as well, trying to keep people in the loop. Have a little bit of fun, but as you know, it's a real serious time for everyone. So trying to give people a break from all the world's problems right now, but understanding that there's something going on right now that's bigger than the sports world, and we hope that sometime soon it'll get settled, so all of us can be at around the rinks, around the baseball stadiums, around the football stadiums, but back to doing and watching and covering what we love most. Anyways, Jeff, take care. Congratulations, and be safe. How are you?
That was Gene Principe. Thanks again, Gene, for doing an episode of the show and for willing to come on and at least try to get on the show. I kind of fall in the same category as the hairdo. It's getting a little wild, and who knew that we had to get haircuts before this happened. So we'll see how long this lasts. This might actually. I joked with my wife that it might get long enough. I might actually put it in a man bun. Who knows? Hopefully it doesn't come to that, because that would be scary. But yeah, thanks for sending that message, Gene. Now, in that clip prior with Gene, we had talked about interviewing the greats of the game. And in my studio, I have a couple special photos hanging on the wall. I've had the fortunate opportunity myself to work alongside some of the greats of the game. And my first game working as a member of the media in the NHL was during a Oilers and Rangers game back in 1999. And the great one, Wayne Gretzky, would eventually play his last game ever in Edmonton. And at that time, I didn't know that. And I took some pictures. So I did a video that I released on Sunday that kind of did a tour of the studio. And I thought I might throw out a little bit of a segment where I talk about these photos. So let's check it out. These two photos are framed and are very important to me for a few reasons. So back when I first started starting out in journalism, I actually went and covered a game between the Oilers and the Rangers, and I was always a big Gretzky fan growing up. And when he came that year, 1999, I picked that game to go as a member of the media. So when we were covering that game, we didn't know at the time it was going to be Gretzky's last game in Edmonton. There was kind of rumors he was going to retire that year, and this was not only as a fan a really cool experience, but everyone kind of whispered that he was going to be retiring that year. So I actually grabbed this photo of him in the locker room after his final game, and I don't know why. I just it's a very simple picture of Gretzky, and I guess I liked it because it's kind of simple. It's kind of has a very candid moment in the locker room, and I have him looking down at another picture that I've taken of him when we were doing the '84 Stanley Cup reunion, doing some video shoots there. So I kind of have, it's kind of funny, I have him looking at himself there. But I took this photo back in his last game, and took a photo of his stall on his last game here after morning skate. And just moments in time where I kind of decided to take some photos. Wound up being his last game, so it kind of wound up being a pretty historic game. And I blew him up and kind of have him. I thought they'd be a nice addition to the set, and not only with my experience working with him when he was a member of kind of the senior management team of the Oilers later on when we moved into Rogers. It's kind of a cool piece of history that I hang up on the wall. All right, that was me showing a little bit of the pieces of the set, and throughout the night I'll throw some other videos up to kind of discuss other aspects of the set, because I built it, designed it, and I have a lot of stuff from my time in the NHL kind of on the wall. So some cool background info on some of the stuff that's on my wall. Now, my next guest is a former colleague and now host on TSN 1260 and his own Locked On Oilers podcast, Tom Gazzola. We worked with each other for 5 NHL seasons, and I'll throw to another clip that didn't quite make the final cut. Tom and I both played junior B hockey, and we talk about some of the similarities of us playing in the jungle. Tom and I, some commonalities here. So I also played junior B. I played for the junior B Bisons.
I think we played the Bisons in provincials. You're a little bit older than me.
I'm a little bit older, and our team was not that good. So
they were good back when I played.
We wouldn't have faced off against you, and we also wore the number 18 as well. So why did you wear 18?
You know what? I always wore 11 and 9 growing up, and then when I grew up in Northside Edmonton, I played for the Maple Leaf Athletic Club. And one year, for some reason, we got brand new jerseys. They were really nice, but one of the Bantam teams got 1 through 17 plus the typical goalie numbers, 30 and 31. And then we got 18 to like 39 or 42 or something ridiculous like that. And I was like, I have never worn anything above 11. And I was like, 18 is 9 and 9. So
yeah, that's exactly so.
And I led second scoring that year in I think it was Bantam AA or Midget AA. And I was like, well, I like 18 now.
Lucky number.
I stuck with it. Yeah, and I still love it to this day.
That's funny because Paul Correa. I didn't wear 18 until I hit juniors, but Paul Correa was obviously a big one of my favorite players, and 9 was always taken. I could never ever get 9 for whatever reason. I mean, obviously Richard, I don't know what it is, but 9 was always taken.
It's a great number.
It is.
It really is.
And that's why I got 18, because it was double 9. 18.
But I for some reason I was just like, yeah, this is my number, and I love it. And to this day, I can't explain it. I like 18. It's a great number.
Nice. All right, that was the story behind why Tom and I wear the number 18, playing Junior B. And I'd like to welcome to the show Tom Gazzola. Tom, how you doing?
Nashro, I'm doing good, pal. It's TSN 1260 movie night, but I had to get in on the last episode of the season of Rinks Around the League. So, been with you all year. May as well do the conclusion.
Did you skip out of the rom-com episode night this week?
No, I wish. You know what? Going into that rom-com, Jason Strudwick, by the way, wanted a rom-com. I didn't. I don't care for rom-coms.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, people think I'm a softie, this and that. I can't stand them. All my old girlfriends would make me watch them, and I'd just be like, oh my God, there better be a payoff for this. And, they'd always ask, hey, did you like that movie? And I was like, oh, yeah, it was fine. But because Struddy picked this rom-com, I actually liked it. It was Notting Hill. It was okay. So today, my pick actually won on the vote, and we're going to watch Death of Stalin, which I think is going to be a great movie. It has some good reviews. So now you're up to speed on what we're doing at 1260.
Nice. And for viewers outside of the Edmonton area, I believe 1260 is doing a movie of the week where you guys do kind of like all of you watch at the same time, right?
Exactly. We pick a movie that's on Netflix. Jason Greger, the host of the afternoon show, has myself, Jason Strudwick, the former Oiler, and Connor Halley, who's our producer, all watch, and then we hashtag 1260 movie watch, and we get listeners to chime in and watch with us. So I usually crack a brewski, have a couple of snacks, and watch whatever movie. And I can't believe my pick actually won the vote today, so I'm proud. I'm excited. I'm nervous. And like a proud papa, I'm going to see this thing unfold in front of my eyes. So we'll see how it goes. But till then, I'm doing this, and we got lots to get to.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thanks for taking some time during self-isolation to come on the show. So apart from movies, tell viewers, how's self-isolation going? What have you been doing, keeping busy? You mentioned today got a pretty jam-packed schedule, but what's been going on since you've been just hanging out in your apartment?
Yeah, you know what? Like, I have a good place to stay. I'm right downtown. My place is nice, a lot of room and everything. But when you're confined like this, it feels like you're twiddling your thumbs. But the funny thing is, Nasher, like today, Dave Tippett had an availability via teleconference like we're doing right now. And so it was kind of like chiming in on a press conference in the morning after a skate on a game day, but also at the same time, that weird element crept in because it was a teleconference, and you look at who's in the press conference, if you will, and you look at all the familiar names that are in there. Our colleagues, Jason Greger, Ryan Rashog, Connor Halley, our producer at TSN 1260, Jim Matheson, Reed Wilkins, everybody, the usuals, Gene, who was just on, but they're not there. So it's different in that regard. But still at the same time, nice to have that familiarity again. And so that was a part of the afternoon. And then I also wound up on another podcast with our friend Mike Penhollow, who is also on Rinks in the League.
Yes, he was.
And him and I do a podcast called Best in the League. And for a hockey podcast, it really has nothing to do with hockey. It's all about the accoutrement of covering an NHL team or being a part of the media or traveling with an NHL team. And today's guest was actually former Bruin and current Hartford Wolfpack player, Matt Bolesky.
Oh.
And so, it's just funny how you think you have all day to do stuff, Nasher, and stuff creeps up on you. I had Luke Gazdick on yesterday on my podcast, Locked On Oilers, which you've been on many times, thankfully, and I certainly appreciate that. And it's funny how that one came to be because I haven't heard from Luke in probably 2 years. And when he was an Oiler, he's a good guy. You know him as well as I do,
yep,
Jeff.
absolutely.
And we would always chat. We'd talk on the plane. We'd talk in the locker room. We'd talk in hotels, or if we happened to catch each other crossing paths in a city when we were on the road. Anyway, so I did Locked On Oilers last week with Curtis Hamilton, another former Oiler. And he told the story about how he, on his first shift in the National Hockey League, hit a guy from behind. It happened to be Brian Lerg in one of the last games of the season in 2015. And John Scott came in. And so John Scott comes in because, it was a dirty hit. And Curtis got five for boarding, but did not get the game misconduct. I think the refs knew that it was his first National Hockey League game. And Curtis was like, I'm shaking in my boots because here comes John Scott. He's going to kill me. And thank God Luke Gazdick came in and saved my bacon. And I was like, this is a great story, because he ended up only playing that one game. So I tweeted out from the Lockdown account a picture of that scrum, and I was like, hear Curtis Hamilton talk about his NHL debut, how he almost got thrown out of the game, and John Scott jumped in, and thank God Luke Gazdick rode into the rescue. And then John Scott saw it because I tagged all of those guys.
Yeah.
And John Scott wrote, Gazdick did what? And the next day, I get a text from Luke, and he's like, get me on your podcast right now. He's like, why is John puffing his chest like that? That's garbage. Get me on the podcast, Tom. I want to clear this up. And I was like, all right, man. So yesterday it ended up being Luke Gazdick. And then that was the first time I actually recorded video on my podcast in an interview. And I clipped a small portion of it, put it up on the Locked On account. And you know what, Nasher, for someone who hated editing and had to do it, I think I got good at it. I don't have the equipment that I used to when I was working with you for Oilers TV. And now I have the luxury of whenever I do TV, I have a great videographer in Dave Parker, who works with Ryan Rashog. But when Rashog's not around, I fill in on the TV side. And all I have to do is say my lines into the mic and look good on camera, and the rest is taken care of down in Toronto. TSN, they cut the pieces together, put them up wherever they need to go, and distribute them. And my life's easier. So I'm still I'm trying to edit these little clips on an archaic system. I think I use QuickTime Player, and I'm like, boy, I really wish I had Adobe Premiere. And I was like, wow, I never thought I would say that in my life. And it's those little things that keep popping up, Jeff, that have kind of oddly enough made what are supposed to be pretty quiet days actually really busy. And so it's been good to have something like that keeping me going.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you were able to keep busy and occupy your time. And yeah, like when you do tasks like that, they kind of eat in your time, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's dinner time.
Yeah.
So
At 5.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Just where we're at now.
Yeah. Well, you kind of did a wrap up. I remember Gaz. It was confusing because your and your brother's kind of nicknames was Gaz, and his nickname was Gaz. And I remember, I don't believe he played in Rogers, but he was definitely in Rexall Place with the squad. And yeah, he was one of those quote unquote glue guys that was a fan favorite. Yeah, he was a good dude around the locker room.
Yep, absolutely. Still is.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's good to hear he's still in good form. I want to go back to March 11th. That was the day, kind of infamous day. The Oilers were playing the Jets, I believe, in a 4-2 loss.
Yep.
But halfway through the game, that's when this COVID-19 stuff started to take notice, and the NBA came, I believe, halfway through the second period, or maybe during the first intermission, that they were suspending the season. And I was at home cooking dinner, and I had the game on just kind of by chance, and I saw the NBA make the announcement. Obviously, the intermission shows was nothing but talking about that, because obviously they kind of were anticipating NHL was going to follow suit. But for fans, you were following the game, but also following that story. Take me through that day and just what stood out at that day and how it unfolded.
Yeah, that was a long day. It was a surreal day, Nash. And the thing about that day was I was actually filling in for Rashog on the TV side in the morning. And it was the first time at Rogers Place that they had all of the COVID-19 media policies in place for both the home team and the away team. So the Oilers did all their press availabilities in the Hall of Fame room. There was everybody safe distancing from each other. And that was the second or third game that was actually in place. But it was the first game where the visiting team had its own press conference room set up, and that was in the WHL visitors room.
Okay.
So we went from the Hall of Fame room all the way to the Jets room and then into the WHL visitors room and did the press conference in there with 3 or 4 players. And then Paul Maurice came in. And that's when it really started to set in that this was the new normal. And little did we know that was going to be the one and only time that actually occurred, because that night I go into our TSN 1260 studios and we're doing the pregame show. Everything's going normally. And in the last segment, in the last 5 minutes, we're hearing that the Utah Jazz Oklahoma City Thunder game is postponed.
Right.
And literally the officials are on the court, like on their headsets, talking to the war room that the NBA has and talking to the league, because it was reported, or it was thought, that one of the Jazz players, which ended up being Rudy Gobert, had COVID-19. So we're watching this all unfold, and I'm signaling my producer, Connor Halley, on the other side of the glass. I'm like, what's going on? He's talking in my ear. I'm trying to talk, and I'm like, all right, so keep an eye on this. Although this is the Oilers pregame show, an NBA game is suspended right now, and we're not sure what's happening, but it has something to do with the coronavirus. And literally, I took off my headset after I signed off and kicked it to the game, where my post-game show producer, Hernan Salas, because I have 2, comes in, and he goes, guys, you won't believe this. The game's suspended, and the NBA says it's going to have an announcement right away. And we're like, oh, man, what's going on? So we went into our talent tank, or the Jock Lounge, and we start watching the Oiler game. And literally like 10, 15 minutes into the game, they're like, the NBA is going to be suspending the league. And then I think 1 game or 2 games in the NBA actually finished that night. And then one other one was suspended. And all we started talking about is like, okay, what does the NHL do? And it was almost like the game itself against the Jets, which was a very important game.
Yep.
The Jets were fighting to get into the playoff picture. The Oilers were looking to catch the Golden Knights because they're trying to reel them in. And it was like secondary. We didn't really care what was going on with the Oiler game because everything that mattered was happening on Twitter, and it was in regard to the NBA game and the situation and how it was being handled by the NBA. And we knew that it had major ramifications for the NHL. And so by the end of the game, obviously we knew the outcome of what the NBA had decided, and it was going to suspend play indefinitely. And then, we just started speculating what the NHL would do. And then finally, Matthew Wannick came in, another one of our TSN 1260 personalities, does the afternoon show. And we basically did an hour and a half. I think it was, we touched on the Oilers' loss to the Jets that night, but really it became the impact that this situation was going to have on the NHL. And you know what, even to a certain extent, we kind of deep dived a bit and how it's going to affect the world and the sporting world as a whole. And you know what, Nasher, here we are 3.5 weeks later, and the news isn't getting better. So it was a surreal moment. You only get a few of those shows and opportunities for something like that, where everybody, you have everybody's attention, and you got to know the tone properly, and you got to know how to carry the conversation. And that was one of the shows in my radio career, which is only 2 years old, really, where I felt like I nailed it, and we got the messaging right, and we had a good read of the tone, and we handled it properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not saying like, hey, I nailed it, like I was a star that night. It was, no, we got it. We did what we were supposed to do to pass the right information, create a conversation. We were getting a ton of text, and trying to support things with facts and all that. And that was one at the end where we're like, okay, I think we did the right thing. And actually we got the ratings back, and we did. We clobbered everybody that night in the city. And a lot of it has to do with the Oilers, obviously, because it had an immediacy to it with the Oilers. But I think, we had people's attention, and hopefully we gave them a good hour and a half, because it felt like we accomplished something that night. But the way things have unfolded, Nasher, honestly, I don't think we could have foreseen, pardon me.
Yeah, and I mentioned to you, because I think we had hockey 2 days after, and I remember mentioning to you that, I think you hit it right on the head, that you guys kind of struck the right tone for that moment in time, because even at that point, I think no one knew the gravity of the impact of COVID-19. I think Italy was just starting to, the gravity was starting to take hold of there. So in North America, it was definitely at that stage, not to say it was taken lightly, but I don't think everyone realized the seriousness. So I think, credit to you guys at the TSM crew, Hernan, everybody on your crew. I think you guys hit the tone bang on. And I think I mentioned that to you when I saw you next, is that you did a really good job articulating the gravity of the situation, because it wasn't just an overreaction, which some fans were kind of screaming that this is an overreaction, but you guys struck a really good tone, the seriousness of it all. So props to you guys for doing such a good job on that show.
Appreciate it, man.
Totally switching gears. Like you said, third week into it, this has been pretty heavy stuff, but you've seen some pretty cool stuff on social. You see NHL players doing whatever it is, 10 hit toilet paper stick handle stuff or whatever it is. But from your perspective, and maybe just in the immediate Edmonton area or media area, is there anything good come out of this? Is there anything that's kind of stuck out that you're like, you know what, if we keep kind of plugging along and supporting each other, doing these types of things, this is going to be a long haul, but we'll get through it?
Yeah, I think overall there's a sense of unity, maybe, and people on the same page. And there aren't a lot of times in the course of my lifetime that I can think of, especially as an adult, where you could actually say that. And listen, there's always going to be outliers and stuff. You see the idiots that have gone with their routines unchanged, and that's pretty high risk. And for the most part, it seems everyone is in lockstep with one another. They want to get past this, understand the severity of the situation. In the case of our world sports, it's a secondary or tertiary thing. It's not what really matters. It's an adult playground, quite frankly. And that's the reassuring thing I'm seeing is people generally understand and get the severity of this situation and want to work together to get through it. That's what I'm reassured by. In terms of, like, I don't mind the gas prices, I'll tell you that much. My tank's been full for dirt cheap, and I love it, but I haven't really been driving anywhere.
That's true.
The weather hasn't been great. Maybe that's helped to keep people indoors. And listen, I know it's like a high stress time, but it seems like when I go pick up groceries or whatever, or go to the bank and take care of tasks that are at essential outposts and all that within the city limits, seems like people are cordial and trying to take care of one another and be good to one another in a time of high stress, and that's a good thing. So I don't know how this will all play out, Jeff. I wish I did. But if gas prices, when we come out of this at the other end, are the same, I'll be quite happy. And if the price of a ticket and a hot dog and a beer to go to a sporting event also comes down, which may happen, considering the financial strain on basically everybody right now, for the fan out there of sport, I think will be a good thing as well.
Right. Well put. While you're at home, what you been binge watching? Tiger King?
I love Tiger King. It reminds me of when I lived in Oklahoma City.
Oh God, yeah.
I don't remember Joe Exotic. I'm sure I passed by many of his billboards along the highway. I never went to Wynwood, the GW Exotic Park. I never knew that was a thing. But there are so many things like that around Oklahoma City where you're like, as soon as you get there for the first time, you see stuff like that and you're like, oh my God, what is that? But I had traveled down there for a few years covering the Barons, and by the time I had to move there for the lockout, it was just like, it felt like home. So that kind of stuff didn't really catch my attention. And quite frankly, after the ending of Tiger King, I looked at the TV screen and I just was like, yeah, that's Oklahoma. That's all I could think of. Like, that's pretty much it. I don't know how many flashbacks I had watching that show, and how many, like, when he was going through the whole judicial process and was being sentenced, I'm like, oh, there's the courthouse. Oh yeah, there's that church. Yeah, that's where the arena was. Oh yeah, there's the where the memorial for the Oklahoma City bombing was, and it's just all these flashbacks. But so I watched Tiger King. I got to get on to Ozark season 3.
Yes,
that's something that's on the priority list. And what else did I finish? There's been a lot of movies with these 1260 movie nights. So
right.
The one thing I have gotten into, though, on I think it's History Channel, is like unidentified UFOs, like documentaries.
Okay.
And I don't know, like there's one on Netflix with Bob Lazar, and it's just captivating, and it's captured me, and I'm like, I wonder if these guys are onto something. And so that's kind of what's gotten my attention. Usually I like war films and stuff like that, anything to do with battle and history, but the whole UFO craze is kind of seeping in. It's too much Joe Rogan. That's what it is. I'm listening to too much Joe Rogan, and I'm like, logically, this could be true. So it's kind of captivating, and it's certainly got my attention.
Nice. Yeah, well, you talk about OKC. I did one trip right before the Barons got relocated to Bakersfield and became the Condors. I went did a trip to OKC, and yeah, I know what you're talking about. When I was watching the show, I recognized some of the skyline. I remember going like in this abandoned bank. It was a beautiful building, but completely empty.
Yes.
It was really eerie. And
I've been in that building. It's like an old bank. Beautiful.
Yeah. And there's a piano that plays by itself. It's one of those plays by itself, and it's kind of cool, but very creepy, weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of road, we'll get to a fan question before I let you go. Our good friend F. Neek on Insta, Fraser. You may have
Fraser?
met him, during the Wayne Gretzky Hockey School, probably.
Yes. Good dude.
He asks, favorite road story if you have one. I'm sure you probably can't tell
Oh,
me
man.
your favorite one, but tell me a favorite one.
Yeah, I was thinking about that today, actually. I'm like, oh, what can I tell people? But one of my favorite ones was in New York City during the draft when it was actually held in New Jersey, but everything was centralized in New York City, and then
Right.
everyone bussed to Jersey or whatever. And so we ended up having what was called the Scouts Dinner when we worked for Oilers TV. Some of the few times that we were actually brought in and made to feel like part of the family, if you will.
Yep.
We got to be a part of the Scouts Dinner at a really, really high-end downtown New York, Manhattan restaurant, and Daryl Cates was there and his family, and it's a big thank you for the hockey ops, and a lot of like alumni pop in, and that night Mark Messier was there.
Nice.
And I loved Mark Messier growing up, and had a chance to talk to him a few times, and that night too got to say hi. And former Oilers PR guy JJ Hebert was like, "You guys want to go out tonight?" And we're all like, "Yeah, we want to go fire it up in New York City." He goes, "Okay, well, Mess has a place that he owns, and it's like a 15-minute cab ride away, but he'll get us in. It's like a really hard place to get into." And I'm like, "I'm in. I'd like that." And so it ended up being myself, Jack Michaels, JJ Hebert, Todd Nelson, Mark Ciampa, Chris Westcott, and I think Nikki Sherman, who was Oilers TV video producer at the time.
Yep.
And we ended up hopping in these cabs, and JJ's like, "Okay, I've got the address," and he hops into the cab with me, and he's telling this cab driver, he's like, "Hey, take us to this address." And the guy's like, "Man, that place doesn't exist. I'm telling you, that's not an address. It doesn't exist." He's like, "No, seriously, this is the place we were told by the owner." And he goes, "All right, I'll get you as close as I can." And we're in this cab, and you go from Manhattan where it's nice, and then you get to some not so nice areas, a little bit grungier parts of Manhattan. And I think it was on the east side, this spot. And so we pull up, and it's like a rundown neighborhood. And all of a sudden, you go from seeing like some sketchy people to like younger people dressed up nice, and you see a few shops lined up, but I didn't see a club anywhere. And the guy's like, "You sure this is the place? This is as close to the address as I can get you." And he's like, yeah, this should be it. This should be it. So we get out. There's 8 of us out of these 2 cabs, and we're all like looking around. And there's like a pizza shop and a convenience store and like a cash for less, money for less store, and then some row housing. And we're like, "Oh no, that's bad." And then there's this huge black dude with a toothpick in his mouth leaning on this gate. And he can see us like looking around like we're lost. And he goes, "You guys here from Mark's crew?" And we're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I'm Tim. Come with me." He's like 6'8", probably was a football player back in the day. This jacked, huge dude. And we're like, okay. And we all look at JJ, and JJ's like, "No, that's good. That's good. Tim's his friend. Tim's going to get us in." We're like, okay. And he takes us through this old rusty gate. And these are apartment buildings that were built in like the early 1900s, late 1800s. Really narrow back alley with like the swinging floodlight and like trash bins on the side overflowing and rats all over the place. And we walk for like 15 seconds between these buildings. And he's like, "All right, this is the place." And we're like, "What are you talking about? Like, are you going to murder all of us and steal our money right now?" And he slides open like a big steel door. And all of a sudden you can hear dum, 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 dum. And we're like, "Whoa." And then there's like a staircase to go up, and then another steel door. And then he like bangs 3 times. And then like you see in the movies, like the slider opens up for the eyes, and the person looks, sees Tim. He's like, "Okay." And then you just hear this big door slide open, and it's this massive nightclub. It was a speakeasy. And
Oh,
I
wow.
go in there, I'm like, "Oh my God." And everything was out of 1930 to 1940. All the furniture, the roof, the flooring, the bars, everything. And then the waiters and the waitresses and the bartenders were all dressed like it was the 30s. And Tim's like, welcome to blah, blah, blah spot. Mark is part owner of this place. It was opened up in 1932 by Lucky Luciano and his gang. Everything you see is original, except for the ceiling. The original tin ceiling had to be replaced, but we replicated it exactly. All the artwork, that's Luciano's stuff. What can I get you guys to drink? And he calls someone over, and we all give our orders. And then he sees like this group. He's like, all right, I'm going to give you guys a spot. Sees this group of people sitting in this like little section in these old vintage chairs, lounge chairs, and everything. And he's like, I need all of you out of here now. Nobody even said a word. Didn't even complain. They saw Tim and they got out of there. And he cleared out everything. He's like, this is yours. Whatever you need. This is so and so. She'll take care of you. Have fun. Mark sent you. You're in good hands here. And It was amazing. Yeah, and all the drinks came in either teacups if you got a spirit, or if you got a beer, it came in a coffee mug, because that's how they did it back in Prohibition. And then I remember going to the bathroom and seeing a piano beside the entrance to the bathroom. And I'm like, why is that there? And then above it was like a handle, and then a bookshelf, and then another bouncer standing there. And the bouncer has someone come up to him, and this guy's whispering in his ear, and the bouncer like shakes him off, says no, and the guy walks away mad. And I'm like, this is weird. And then another guy walks up to him. The bouncer looks at him and goes, yep. And then he pulls the light down, and it slides the bookshelf open. And then there's a hallway, and I look through the hallway, and there's another part of the club with another party going on. And I'm like, oh my God. So it was a secret passage. It was really cool going to Mark Messier's speakeasy in Manhattan, a hole in the wall, literally. We thought we were going to die, and it ended up being a really, really fun night with some good people. So that's one of my favorite stories for Fraser.
New York. Can't go wrong with New York. That's as you know, a very awesome place. Hey, before I let you go, there's someone on YouTube, Blackhawks fan 20. He mentioned something here. I don't know if you know this, but he writes, I don't know if you've heard this story before, but I'll tell you anyways. Mark Lewis, as you know, is a stadium announcer, and we've worked with him a lot. He says credited himself for scoring a goal in the NHL. And it says he has a score sheet where he announces the goals and penalties, and it was in the 80s, and Messi scored a goal, and he wrote his own name down on the score sheet. He turned on the microphone and made his announcement, Oilers goal, his 47th of the season, scored by number 11, Mark Lewis. Have you heard that before?
No, I'm kind of not surprised, because Mark's a character.
He is.
Mark's a character. I haven't seen him in a couple of years, probably since the closing of Rexall Place, but you know what's funny is you work so many game nights, and I'm sure maybe he did it deliberately, but maybe it was just a brain cramp. But that's actually pretty funny. I did not know about that, but I do remember the time he was in a McDonald's hockey card commercial. Him and the guy from the Montreal Forum, Maple Leaf Gardens, all the familiar and famous voices of the NHL in a time when you would hear them after goals on hockey broadcasts.
Right.
I remember him being a part of that. And I remember seeing him in person for the first time when I worked one of my first Oilers games as Gene Principe's studio runner. And I was like, oh, that's him. And got to know him a little bit over the years. Really nice guy. And that's hilarious that he did call himself over the PA for a goal. So congrats on the 47th of that season, Mark. Well done, buddy. Earned that one.
We'll have to look that up. We'll see if that is the legend that exists in former Rexall Place. I remember doing a really good portrait of him up on the catwalk in his speaker booth during farewell Rexall season. So I do miss his voice. It was one of those things that kind of that chapter had to close with Rexall and open up next with Rogers Place with a clean slate. But I do miss it's him and Rod Phillips are the voices of our childhood. So I definitely miss his voice. Cool.
Me too.
All right.
Me too,
well,
Nasher.
All right, Tommy. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I'll turn you loose to check out that movie. Hopefully your selection does really well. And again, thanks for coming on for a show with me and supporting the show, and for coming on for my season finale.
Thank you very much, Nasher. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, buddy. That was Tom Gazzola for TSN 1260. You can also catch his podcast on Locked On Oilers podcast. Now, my next guest is the content manager for the Calgary Flames, Ryan Dietrich. Now, he and I did a cool episode out on location on the frozen lakes of Banff, Alberta. You can check out that episode in the playlist as well. The goal was to head out and skate on this pristine, crystal clear lakes for this shoot. But by the time I got to Calgary, it snowed a foot, so that didn't happen. But before heading out, it snowed a lot. But it was still a really cool experience. He was a really good sport, tagging along. We had a good chat, time to catch up. So, but before we get to him, if you're just joining us, we still have Sean Bell coming on. We just had a message from Gene Principe, and that was just Tom Gazzola on earlier. And our prize giveaway from Second String Leather Company is still to come. My friends at Second String Leather Company will announce the winner. All right, back to Dietrich. Let's go to a clip talking about the walk in the Saddle Dome. Let me know in the chat whether it be you think you'd be up to taking the walk. Let's check it out. And a characteristic of the Saddle Dome is the walk. But it's kind of caught on to be this rite of passage, and often on Twitter and Instagram you see kind of new reporters going, "Oh, I'm gonna do the walk," and then they'll live tweet it or live stream it or whatever.
I feel like I almost do it every night I'm up there, but I do it a lot less now. It's.
Are you used to it now? Like,
yeah. You know what's funny? I'm not really scared of heights at all. But
okay.
Yeah, when you get up there, it tests you a little bit. That's for sure. I mean, you're exposed, and there's 20,000 people below you. Yeah. So probably the scariest time would be during the World Juniors in 2012.
Oh, okay.
Because it was a Latvia Czech Republic game or something like that, and I remember walking across, and a goal was scored. Right above the scoreboard happens to be where the goal horns are.
Oh, right.
And that'll definitely put some impact on your hearing for a few years. So
yeah.
I'm still a little bit skittish.
All right, that was Ryan Dietrich and I on the cold frozen lakes of Banff, Alberta, talking about the walk in the Saddle Dome. And coming live from Calgary is Ryan Dietrich from his own home studio. Dietrich, how's it going, man?
It's going pretty good. How about you, Jeff?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for hanging out and coming on the show.
Well, I had to squeeze it in, tonight's 1260 movie night, right? So you got to try and find a time where you get it. I didn't, Notting Hill, not for me. I did do Superbad I think that was like 10 days ago, but yeah, the rom-coms, kind of like Tom, that's not my style. Maybe I'll tune in a little bit later. We'll see.
Right. So, I mean, apart from the 1260 movie nights, what else have you been squeezing in your schedule in self-isolation during this COVID-19 crisis?
I mean, I'd like to say a lot, but certainly it's been a little different from our usual schedule. You know what it's like, right? Normally, every second night you're out until 11 p.m. or midnight working, and all of a sudden from 5 p.m. onwards now I have all this time that I don't know what to do with myself, really. So getting caught up on some TV shows, big Better Call Saul guy. I like Homeland. I haven't started any of those seasons yet. Of course, Tiger King. I've got to finish that tonight at some point. But outside of that, I've got 2 more episodes left. I mean, outside of that, it's been, to be honest with you, it hasn't been very quiet at work. We're still, creating plans. Obviously, a lot of uncertainty. We don't know whether, even when we're writing a story, do we use past tense or present tense when we're referring to a player's season or the season as a whole? So that adds some different complications, but it's forcing us to get creative, and a lot of meetings right now, but we're figuring it out slowly but surely.
So, I talked to Tom about binge watching shows. I myself hopped on the Tiger King bandwagon, and I believe you've been to OKC as well, so you kind of have some familiarity with ties of just kind of maybe the people down there. I don't know.
Well, kind of like both of you, I don't remember seeing Joe Exotic, but yeah, it's true that like there is stuff like that around. So you go for a drive and it doesn't seem too out of place. It's kind of like going to Nashville and seeing a billboard for boot deals. It's kind of just part of the regular lifestyle. So,
Right.
you know what? I do hope to go back at some point. I love Oklahoma City. Every time I went there, and I went fairly often and covered a deep playoff run, which we might get to a little bit later. So much fun. The people there are great. I love it. I think I often said I would like a chance to maybe work there or live there one day because it's just such a good community. And hey, I guess you start to think about those things nowadays because it's all about unity and community right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my one trip to OKC was with Chris Westcott, so he definitely OKC native. I would call him a native. I think he was born and
Yeah.
raised in Buffalo, New York, but I think he calls OKC home a little bit too. He definitely showed me the OKC hospitality. So you're right. It's a great part of the world. It's pretty interesting. So yeah, we've been binge watching that as well. I think I finished the season. So yeah, interesting stuff. Perfect timing for that series because no one else has anything to do. So they've been binge watching it.
No kidding.
Flipping back a little bit, let's dial back the calendar. We filmed our episode, I think we established right before the bye week, just before the All-Star game, I believe. And we, like I mentioned in the top here, we were going to do a show. You had gone out to Lake Minnewanka like the week before, and you just had these amazing photos of you on this glass lake. And I was like, oh, I want to go there and I want to shoot a season there or a show there. And I think I went down there. I texted you. You were like, yeah, let's do it. So I was like, sweet. And then, yeah, it snowed like a foot. We get out there and it's just like completely covered. But we still made it out and made an episode of it. I bet you're just longing to get out there at this point, being trapped inside this whole time.
Yeah, I mean, when this whole thing started, you kind of figured, well, at least we have that, right? We can kind of go and take a few trips around the mountains. And I mean, on the surface, it seems like a good idea, right? There's nobody out there most of the time, especially in the area where we shot. So that's what I was looking forward to right away. I said, well, I'm kind of an outdoorsy guy. Maybe there's a chance to go out there and, shoot some video, take some photos, go for some walks. And then obviously the parks are now closed too, which, I mean, I don't disagree with any of this. It just makes you long for it a little bit more because it is such a beautiful time of year. And we got lucky. Like, that was an awesome place to set up shop and shoot. I mean, Rundle Mountain, I think when we were setting up, we were like, there were probably 5 or 10 photographers there. And we're like,
That's
are
right.
we getting in their shot? And we're like, well, too bad.
Yeah.
They're getting in our shot, right? So it's so amazing. So yeah, and in the summertime too, that's, hopefully in a couple of weeks, months, we might be able to get back out there because, Rundle Mountain in the background, you get that thing at sunrise and sunset. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I think the expression I used was Photoshop. You were like,
oh yeah,
I think they're going to be in their shot. And I was like, Photoshop. They can just magic brush us out of there.
Yeah. We're used to it by now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that was a great time out on the lake. That was made for a wicked episode. Let's, after that, the season kind of progressed. We had some pretty good Battle of Alberta highlights. But let's dial back to March 11th. Now, the Flames didn't play. I think you guys were in the middle of a 3-day break. And I believe the Islanders were in town on their Western Canadian swing. And we're ready to play you guys on the Thursday, I think. And
yep, that's right.
The NBA announced their postponement Wednesday night. So what was it like for you and the Flames not playing a game at wherever you were, watching things unfold? And obviously there was probably a lot of chatter going on. What was kind of the vibe and what was unfolding down in Calgary?
I mean, you're right. I think the first thing I thought of it feels like even more of a lifetime ago that we played because, like you said, that was Wednesday, March 11th that all that went down, and our previous game was on Sunday against the Golden Knights, which was actually a kind of a heartbreaking loss, a last-minute goal by Shea Theodore to win it after coming back from 3 down. But all that doesn't matter. We don't remember that game, right? But
yeah,
going into Thursday, kind of similar to what Tom said. it was sort of the first day where those new protocols were fully in place. And I think as an organization, we were one of the first teams that really enacted the distancing protocol in the sense that we weren't allowed in the locker room. So we actually were out of the locker room beginning on, I think it was the Saturday. So before that game against the Golden Knights. But that Wednesday was the first day where a proper podium was set up. There were literally lines painted on the floor saying you can't cross this. And in advance of Thursday's game, the New York Islanders were going to use that for their morning skate availabilities as well as post game. So it really did change everything of what we were looking at. But we covered practice that day as normal as we could. Obviously, went home and started working on my game preview for the following day, which was really good. It's too bad it didn't see the light of the day, but we were, I was watching the Oilers and Jets game, kind of like everybody, because it was sort of the marquee match of the night. Playoff implications had a lot to do with the Flames too. But I'm big on the Twitter. I don't think I'm ever off it. So I saw those tweets come down, and as soon as the game was delayed because the doctors had run on the floor, and then all of a sudden, I think it was about a half hour later, they say, yeah, Rudy Gobert is tested positive. And at that point, sinking feeling you get in your stomach, I knew right away it was over for some time. We still don't know the scale of it, but it was going to be a while. So those tweets go down. We sort of expected that the NHL might do something that night, so we got ready in case there was a press release of some sort. Got on the horn with my boss to talk about various things, but once we knew that there was going to be no statement that night and that it was going to pour into Thursday somehow, we had a pretty good just feeling that game wasn't going to play out anyway. So I told my boss, I'm somebody who's immunocompromised. So I told my boss, we're probably not playing. I'm going to stay home, just, out of an abundance of caution, that being a good idea. We did, as an organization, hold a press conference that day just to sort of give some initial thoughts on what the plans were going to be. But I was able to handle the live streams from my home setup here and wrote a story off it. And I think it was that day or the day after that we announced that it was paused officially for some time. So now we're just trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah, totally. I think not only the hockey, I think the whole world is obviously trying to figure it out. So that's, kind of speaks to the gravity of the issue. So, so I mean, almost all of us are kind of in self-isolation, kind of waiting to see how this thing unfolds. Like for myself, my day job, I'm with the government of Alberta, so I'm at every press conference that they have. So for me, it's kind of business as usual, but for everybody else, they're kind of stuck at home and waiting, and we'll see what unfolds. The Flames have had a really interesting season. It's hard to look back because it feels like ages ago, but there's been a lot of big topics have come. You've gone through, the team has kind of go through its ebbs and flows. But the one thing that has completely rocketed up the rankings is the Battle of Alberta. And I just want to get your thoughts on the battle, because you were born and raised in Calgary. And obviously, I was born and raised in Edmonton, so obviously we have childhood favoritism towards those teams, and we kind of remember those battles of Alberta's that were legendary. And I think this year there was definitely a page turning. There's always this chatter about, it's the Battle of Alberta. Every game means a lot, and it does. But I think this year was another level, and I think both teams could have claimed bragging rights. Like I mentioned to you earlier today, that there was the stick flip in Edmonton that as a sports fan, I thought that was awesome, because it was just like awesome. It was just, if an Oiler player did that in Calgary, I would have lost my mind. It would have been really cool. So that was really cool to watch. And then on the flip side, they go into Calgary and then just absolutely, they chase him from the net, they cream him. So both sides of the Battle of Alberta have kind of bragging rights to certain parts of the season, but working for the Flames, how's it unfolded in front of you? It must be pretty cool to watch.
I mean, as a fan, that last game at the Saddle, I mean, first of all, I mean, that from a Flames perspective, not the result on the scoreboard you're looking for.
No, no.
And certainly the players were, I mean, they were embarrassed after that one. That was the word they used. But,
Yeah.
you know, as somebody who, you know, isn't necessarily in the dressing room in those moments, you know, and I'm up in the press box, I mean, that was pure theater. I mean, that second period was off the rails. And when they decided to, I think they called it a few minutes or seconds early, right? So they could kind of figure out the penalty situation before starting the third period.
Yeah.
The buzz in that building, I mean, that topped, you know, I hesitate to say a playoff game because that's a fairly high level, but it was pretty incredible. And, you know, when Cam Talbot and Mike Smith stepped into center ice there, that just, I mean, that's the season highlight for me. But that, for both sides, right? That kind of says exactly where this rivalry went. And at the start of the year, we really lamented the fact that we weren't going to meet each other for the first time until late December. It seemed like such a oversight by the NHL to schedule it that way. But, you know, what enabled the Battle of Alberta in every game so far to be so good was the fact that the games had meaning for the first time in a while. So we were already deep into the season and the teams were battling for first place. There's actually something on the line for the first time in, I mean, however many years, right? So I don't think stepping into that first game or the last game that we saw here at the Saddle Dome, the teams necessarily set out to say, I hate these guys. But that's a natural byproduct when you're battling for first place. And you know that there's a very real possibility that you're going to see these guys in the first round. So I'm not necessarily a believer in tone setting per se, but I do believe that some of that was happening because you know, the game's evolved, right? But there is legitimately a mutual disdain for these two teams. And it's a real shame we didn't get to see what would have been a pretty entertaining regular season finale this weekend. But let's hold out hope that we might get it again. Let's hope, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. It really set the stage for some really cool last week of the regular season for sure. But yeah, back to the goalie fight. When Smith went to the red line, like I didn't get to know Smith because obviously he wasn't on the team when I worked there, but you know, I got to know Talbot pretty good. He's a pretty even keeled guy. He's not super loud. He kind of goes about his business. You know, he's a dad. You know, he and I kind of talked about when his twins were born in New York. We talked about you know, what it's like being in the, because those were his first kids, and at that time I had 3. So, you know, getting to know him, pretty even-keeled guy. Never in a million years would I thought I would see him fight. But when Smith went to the line and Talbot went out, like, there's stories of people in bars and restaurants that like stopped and looked at the screen because it was about to go down. And I didn't know, and maybe you didn't know either, that was the first goalie fight in the Battle of Alberta, which is hard to fathom with all the stuff that we've seen.
It's crazy, right? You know, and obviously I'm going to look at this a little bit through Flames glasses, but I have all the respect and admiration in the world for Cam Talbot of taking that fight on, because let's get this clear, Mike Smith is kind of a beast. There isn't a goalie in the NHL that I think would win that fight. And Cam's not a huge guy, right? So in a goalie fight, especially if you don't have that reach advantage, you're in a tough spot. So it was funny that like the next day we talked about a post game, and we obviously talked to him the next day at practice too. You know, Cam had a few laughs about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, I knew I was losing that fight as soon as I went in there." But you know, there was a little bit. Again, it wasn't something that I think either side planned. I think Mike Smith probably wanted to have that happen a little bit more, but
because he knew he was going to win.
Well, that doesn't hurt.
But
it was a point in the game too where you know, Flames weren't playing all that well. Talbot came in relief in that game and was under siege in that period. I think he faced 20 some odd shots, so that's a lot for 17 minutes of work. And then in the process, that final save that he makes, he covers it up and he gets a poke from, I think it was Gagne there. So just one of those things that just happens organically. And, you know, he may not have won the fight against Mike Smith, but he caught a couple of good blocker shots in on Gagne. So I guess he left happy.
Well, and hey, like I've played junior B hockey, obviously, believe it or not, Dietrich, but I am not an enforcer role.
It shocks me.
I know. But when guys that aren't pegged as the enforcers or the energy guys, when those guys, like even Sam Gagne, I think, I don't know if it was the previous Flames game or a game before, or Nuge got in a fight. And like,
Yeah.
when a guy like that drops the mitts, everybody like just is like, oh my God, they're fighting. And I think the same thing happened with Talbot. I think Flames fans were like his stature just went like, because he's a nice guy, but obviously, he was willing to kind of pay the price, so to speak. And I can only imagine the Flames fans would probably went nuts, even if he lost or drew the fight. I'm sure that that just added to Talbot's reputation there for sure.
And you know what? For both guys too, that's I mean, we've talked about the stories about how there's been a couple of guys on either side that have swapped colors this year. Smith,
Yep.
Lucic, Neal, Talbot, all those guys, right? And there's actually some more if you date it back even further.
Yep.
I think a lot of people don't really understand how difficult that is, especially in a rivalry like this. I know we talked to Lucic about it quite a bit, and he wasn't. I mean, you've seen Milan Lucic. He's willing to. He's probably one of the most candid interviews that there is in this league. He wasn't afraid to admit the fact that he still has friends on the other side. Like, so that's tough to put aside. And what is considered probably one of the most storied rivalries, or certainly here in Western Canada in the NHL. And, to be looking down the barrel of the team that you once represented. So I'm not sure what goes into that mentally and how they're able to overcome that. But yeah, you're right. When a guy steps up in that situation and does it, I mean, he's automatically endeared to both the fan base and the locker room.
Yeah. And I think even Oilers fans, I think because Talbot was a former Oiler, it was just, I think that's what made it more legendary. It was just like, the two former goalies swapping sides, fighting. It was just, it's too bad we don't have that final game at the end of the year to add to the chapter, because God knows what would happen.
Yeah, no kidding. It'd be insane. It'd be insane.
Yeah. Let's turn the page a little bit. When I built the studio, you used to, for fans watching, you used to work for the Oilers before heading off to the Jets and then winding up with the Calgary Flames. And you spent a lot of time in Rexall, as did I. And they put all the seats in the stadium up for sale. So I originally passed on the idea, but I wound up buying a couple, mainly because when I was brainstorming the second season of this series, I thought, what better way to interview people than to actually have them sit in a seat from Rexall, which is pretty cool. Now, I know via Twitter and Instagram that you bought some seats yourself. Where are they, and have you done anything with them?
Well, they're actually in my garden shed at the moment, but the only reason they're there, and they will be inside soon. The reason they're in there, I had a pretty busy summer last summer, but so I moved again. That's kind of what I do. But anyway, you would know this as well. You've got to clean them out real good.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't want to bring them into the house until that was done. I did purchase a pretty cool steaming device off Amazon, which is literally 3 feet from me right now, still in its box. So I'm ready to get that done as soon as the weather turns a little bit.
Nice.
And it's going to be coming into. I haven't really decided whether it's going to be in my studio or in my kind of my TV watching room. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. All I knew is as soon as I saw that happen, I just knew I had to have them. I spent so many hours in Rexall.
Yeah.
The building saw, reach the end of its lifespan, but I loved everything about that building. I loved working there. Growing up, I lived in Calgary, but I would often drive up to see games and would be in there as soon as the doors opened. So, that building meant a lot to me personally, and to actually have a physical piece of it, that's pretty cool, along with the memories.
Yeah, definitely clean them. On my Instagram stories, I kind of chronicled me cleaning these things, and I have the same. I have like a steam water cleaner thingy, and I think I did 4 or 5 passes on these cushions. You just they're the original seats in the upper bowl. They're just gross. But when you do it, remember take some pictures on Instagram, because if you pop the seat cushions off, which is really easy to do, to be able to do a deep clean, you pop the cushions off, steam clean them, put them back in. Super easy to do. But sometimes there's things that kind of fall in. 99.8% is absolutely disgusting things. You want to use a vacuum to suck all of that up. But in my seats, I actually had 50-50 ticket stubs from the CFR, which, as you know, used to inhabit that rink for like almost 2 weeks while the team was on the road. So I think they were back from 2001. So you never know. Maybe there's a ticket stub from the 1980s in there. So keep an eye out for that.
I did pop one of them off in the summer. The second one yet to be revealed. But yeah, I maybe that's why I didn't open the second one yet. The first one sort of scared me off for a few months. But yeah, I found an old 50-50 in there too. It wasn't from an Oilers game. I can't remember what it was for, but yeah, it's kind of cool to see that time in the past. So yeah, I mean, I get it. People are wedging whatever they have in their pockets in there at the time.
Yeah. You have every right to be scared. Especially with COVID-19 going on, like God knows, like you don't want to reveal another virus. We'll get to some fan questions before I let you go. I'll ask the same question I asked Tom from Fraser F. Neek on Instagram. He asked a favorite road story. So do you have a favorite road story or a one?
Yeah, I have a couple, but I'm sort of offended actually that Tom didn't remember that I was there that night at Messier's, but that's okay. I'll forgive him for that one. But he provided many more details than I'm able to remember from that night. I remember two things. I remember, yeah, he's totally right about the cabs. I remember sharing a cab with Derek Laxdal. It was just me and him, who was the coach of the Edmonton Oil Kings at the time. He now coaches the Texas Stars of the American Hockey League. Yep. So we had a nice little conversation there. And then the other thing I remember is that we had a really early morning meeting at the NHL head office the next day. In between, apparently some fun was had. I don't know.
That never happens in New York. No, come on.
No. Not my favorite story, though.
Oh, okay. Hit me with your good one there.
Sorry, I've actually got a couple, but go in a little bit of a different direction. It was actually something that I think I thought a little bit about going through this time that we're going through now. So bit of a news hound to my detriment. I probably should be watching a little bit less of that nowadays. Just overconsumption of that's not what you need. Nevertheless, seeing some of the images out of New York City is pretty crazy. Streets are mostly empty and things like that, which is, you never see that in a city like that. But I think it was either 2 or 3 years ago. I was on a road trip when I was with the Jets, and kind of a rare setup there. Every year that I was with the Jets, we never actually knocked off all the New York teams at once. We always did 2 trips to New York a year for whatever reason. So on this particular one, we started in Nashville. And then the following night, it was a back-to-back game against the Devils. Then we had a day off, and then we'd play the Islanders at Barclays Center in Brooklyn. But when we got to Jersey after that game in Nashville, the weather was terrible. So it was this giant snowstorm, and all of a sudden around noon, when we would normally be getting our pregame stuff ready for that night, they announced that the game was postponed. So we ended up actually having a third trip to the New York area later that month. Nevertheless, the game was postponed. This blizzard's happening. After the game in New Jersey, we were going to bus it over to Manhattan, where we would stay in preparation for the following day's practice and then the game against the Islanders. We just decided to expedite that and get over to Manhattan right away and kind of shack up before, maybe end of the road shut down, things like that. So what was nuts about that is we've seen nowadays the streets of New York are empty, but they're not totally empty. Now, I remember that day in New York City, though. We went from Jersey City, which is just across the Hudson River, went through the Holland Tunnel into Midtown, and then we had a hotel in the financial district in Lower Manhattan. It was absolutely insane. We didn't see one car or one person the entire way. And this is New York City. It was mind-blowing to me. So we get to our hotel, and I decided, it was a snowstorm, but frankly, here in Canada, we've seen enough of those. It really didn't seem that bad to us. I decided to go for a bit of a walk. The weather wasn't pleasant, but it was good enough to kind of get around on foot. And our hotel was right near the World Trade Center. So I walked across the West Side Highway, walked around the World Trade Center, kind of looked around a little bit. I was literally standing on the busiest, or one of the busiest roads in Manhattan, and there's nobody around, not one car.
Wow.
So I go over to the World Trade Center. I snap a few photos with my phone, and my one regret is I didn't bring my DSLR, because I could have got some insane photographs. But
Right.
nevertheless, went over to the 9/11 memorial, and actually had a moment to myself, which was pretty powerful. And on the way back, I talked to a few police officers, and they were just kind of joking. They said they've never in their life seen literally not one person out there. So to me, that was just mind blowing. It's unfortunately more memory at this point than anything, because I didn't have my camera with me. But man, even now, where the city is essentially on lockdown, you're still not quite getting that exact same feel. And fortunately, with that snowstorm, everybody was safe. So I can look back on that memory as being a pretty fond experience. The second one, believe it or not, kind of weather related as well, and it goes back to Oklahoma City. I was covering the 2013 Barons playoff run all the way through. So we would stay in Oklahoma City and travel to their road cities, kind of home base in OKC, for as long as they were in the playoffs. Can't remember. I think this is the second round, but it was big time tornado season, as it tends to be down there in May.
Yep.
So this is late May at this point. We were getting set to play the game. We knew all day that tornadoes were a possibility. They actually said it could be one of the most dangerous days of the year. So we were prepared. We knew what evacuation procedures would be in place and things like that. It gets time for warm-up. Warm-up's delayed because there's this tornado forming a little bit west of town, and it looks to be pretty dangerous. 15 minutes later, they tell us they're evacuating everybody in the Arena Bowl, and the game's postponed. So that tornado, by the way, it's known as the El Reno tornado, still the biggest in North American history, I believe, 2.5 miles wide.
Wow.
So it was absolutely insane. So what they did is they sent us, ice level was street level, but they sent all the fans, staff, players who were half dressed, literally in their hockey gear, all down to the underground parking garage. And we were getting, following it as best we could on Twitter at the time. And tornado was heading right for downtown. And fortunately, right at kind of the last second, it hooked south, missed the city, and didn't take out any urban areas, which was awesome. But after we knew it was safe, we came back upstairs to the arena level. It was still a pretty bad storm outside. I grabbed my camera and started shooting because the rink was flooding. So from all four corners, water was pouring in. It was going down the stairwells of the upper bowl like a river. Everybody's running to get electrical gear out. The Barons locker room was totally, like, the ceiling had collapsed. It was just crazy. So one of those nights that you, without a doubt, remember for the rest of your life. And I should note too, while we were down there in the parking garage, the power went out at one point too. So it was pure darkness.
Wow.
So crazy night. And funnily enough, I was there with Mark Ciampa, who he was your boss at the time. He now runs the digital department in New Jersey.
Yep.
We had a gentleman by the name of Carter Baum, who was an intern with the Barons, stay in our hotel room that night because he didn't, it wasn't safe to drive home at that point. He's now the content manager with the Chicago Blackhawks. So it's kind of funny how it all comes full circle a little bit. But those two, we look back at this period of time as being something we're going to remember for the rest of our lives. And I look back at those two events as being the same. And it's funny how it has nothing to do with hockey, but it has everything to do with unity, right?
Right. Yeah, totally. That's insane. The only close to that scenario on the road for me was we got iced in Buffalo. We finished the game, ran out to the airport, and it was freezing rain. We barely got out to the airport, and they canceled the flight. So we went back to the hotel, stayed the night actually in the Flames. I think the Flames were actually supposed to be flying in that night. We took all their rooms, and then the next morning we got up, went to the plane, and I'm glad we didn't take off because the entire plane had icicles hanging on it. Like it was almost like a comic. Like you had this huge plane, the charter, and it was just literally caked in ice. And that's nowhere near those crazy stories, but that was the only time when we were on the road and that happened. So, well, Deech, thanks for coming on. Thanks again for being a good sport, filming that episode out in Banff. It was a really cool episode. I had a lot of good feedback of how it looked, and it's funny when you look at the episode, you look at the progression, it got darker and darker and darker. So I think the exposure kind of like varied in multiple shots, but hey, it turned out really well, and wish you the best of luck moving forward, and hopefully we get back to some sort of hockey in the near future. So, but thanks for coming on, bud.
Yeah, you bet, Nasher. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it, buddy.
Awesome, thanks. All right, that was Ryan Dietrich, content manager for the Calgary Flames. We talked about the seats in Rexall Place, and it sounds like he's got some work to do to get his seats up to speed. Again, along the lines of explaining my pictures of Wayne Gretzky, here's a little excerpt of me explaining how I got the seats anchored to the floor. So yeah, in terms of the set, the focal point obviously is these two chairs, which I have my guests on, and yeah, when they first started selling the seats from Old Rexall Place, I actually passed on the idea at first because they're expensive. They're kind of not a I guess aesthetically pleasing thing you want to just put in your living room. So I thought, no, you know what, I'm not going to do it. But then when I started pondering about doing season 2 of the show, I thought, you know what better way to interview people about rinks around the league than to actually interview them while they're sitting in a seat from one of the rinks. So you can tell they are, pretty worn down. Like the handles the paint's chipped away at them. They're the original seats that are in the upper bowl of Rexall Place. So it, but it did take a little bit of work to get to these seats. And actually, this is what it looked like before. And then when I cleaned out the basement to make way for the studio, I kind of had a vision of what I wanted it to look like. And then I started chipping away at it. So first thing was the design. I had to sit down and actually sketch out a design of how I wanted it to look. And then when I actually got the seats, they became really the centerpiece of the show itself, to be honest. To be able to be a really cool visual of something from a rinks around a league. And something kind of cool for my guests to sit in and kind of almost be in transport them back to the rink that they used to play in some cases. So I thought it'd be a really cool element, but we had to decide on how we were actually going to bolt these things down, because if you look at the footings, they are bolted, which would be at the concrete at Rexall, and I didn't know how I was going to get this ready for a guest to sit in. I thought about skids on each side, and which we could have done, but it might have looked a little amateurish, I guess. I wanted to look clean and simple, so we actually bolted it to the floor here in the basement. And so once we lined it up and picked a spot for it to go, that's when my good friend Chiadomo, you can follow him on Twitter, he came over and he really helped me out a lot with figuring out how to anchor these seats to the floor. And then also he helped me put the flooring in, because I didn't want it, obviously this is my basement floor and I wanted to look a little bit more professional. So I actually got the cheapest laminate I could get at Home Depot, and he helped me measure it all, cut it all, and put it into place. So he was a huge help in making the show look the way it looks today. All right, that's how I got the seats in. Again, shout out to Chiadomo for helping me with that. Now, my next guest is former NHLer Sean Bell. Sean and I crossed paths during my time with the Oilers and dealing with the Oilers alumni group a few years back, and he was very gracious to take some time out of his busy schedule to come on the show. Before we get to Sean, let's take a look at a clip. Now, because mostly when I film these shows, I film on mirrorless cameras, and they only have a 20-minute record time. And so I have to kind of pause and go and push record on the cameras. And it was during one of these breaks where I got a great response from Bell about being a kind of a fringe player and rediscovering his passion for the game, playing out in where he eventually would end his career and retire, ending his playing time over in Europe. So let's have a look at when Sean rediscovered his passion for the game.
It renewed my passion for hockey.
Yeah?
Yeah. My last year, you know, being with the Oilers, being with the Avalanche, being up and down, the way it ended here in Edmonton didn't really sit well with me.
Right.
And like being over there, like renewed my passion for hockey. Like I loved it over there.
That's good to hear, because just observing players who go up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, you can just see, you know, when they go back down each time, if they go multiple times, it's pretty. It's not only a hit to your ego or your character, but it's exhausting, and you start. I think obviously self-doubt kind of creeps in, because you're like, am I ever going to stick?
Yep.
And it's kind of refreshing to hear that to renew your passion, you went to almost a completely unheard of spot for you, right? So your career.
Yeah, I was. I kind of just went with an open mind. Like it was myself, Ben Andrus, who was with the Oilers at the time, and then Dustin Cohn, and the three of us were skating at Kingsman Arena. And the Oilers were on the other side. Like it was there right before camp started. So it was like September 6th.
Yeah, when guys start rolling into town, yeah.
And I just remember us sitting there and we were trying to bag skate ourselves. I'm like, what are three of us going to do bag skating ourselves? Like my agent called me. He's like, you want to go to Europe? And I was like, yeah, sure. He's like, okay, let's wait a little bit. They're trying to sort out an injury. And then as soon as that happened, I went over and I was like, okay, it was awesome. It's an experience that I don't think I'd ever give back. You know, like despite wanting to play in the NHL longer, I don't know if I'd ever give it back, because it took me to some pretty cool spots and things that I probably never would have seen.
All right, that was one of the great clips from my interview with Sean Bell. Really great to hear an athlete and a hockey player rediscovering his passion for the game, because when you're a pro, semi-pro player, and you go through the grind with the aspirations of getting into the NHL, it can be really a big grind. So and you can kind of lose your passion for the game. So it was good that he rediscovered it. And speaking of which, Sean joins me now live from his house in Edmonton. How's it going, Sean?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thanks for being patient. Tom and Dietrich just wouldn't shut up.
Holy man, Tom's just making up story after story. Like, listen, I'm from Edmonton, and if you ever say that the Maple Leafs Athletic Club jerseys are nice, you're just lying to everybody.
Oh boy. So, Sean, how is self-isolation going for you? It sounds like you're still busy, which is good, but how are you spending your time?
Well, things are good for me. Like right now, I'm working at OHA Academy, and unfortunately, we had to shut down all of our ice times, and kids aren't going to school anymore. So, what we've done is we've created a virtual academy. So all of our programming is via online. We usually use Zoom for that, and for 15 minutes a day, I have to talk to each and every kid on my team. So that takes up a lot of my time, and I'm definitely going to probably get more gray hair from talking to some of them.
Don't doubt, eh? I want to take back to our episode that we did just before Christmas, I believe, and got some really good stuff out of you, some really good insight on being a player in the NHL. But you also hold the record for going for 5 to 5 on the goal horn quiz.
Yeah, I do.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah,
listen to goal horns.
Yeah, and it's not an easy one to accomplish. But it was great having you on the show and talking about it. In the clip we just watched, we talked about you rediscovering your passion for the game. Now coming out of it as a retired player and dealing with younger players. How's that passion translated over to the players that you're dealing with on a daily basis?
Well, I truly enjoy it. These kids, they keep you young. They they're like little sponges. They want to consistently learn. The minute they know that you've played hockey, they open up to you, and you kind of gain their trust right away. And every single time you step on the ice, they're kind of hovering around you. They want to talk to you about your history, what you've done, some of the guys that you played with, against, and it's pretty fun to be able to work with the kids and just to be able to pass my knowledge along to them.
Awesome. Yeah, I would thinking back to when I was a junior player or even a midget or bantam player, that would have been awesome to have someone to kind of learn the ropes from, for sure. So kind of going into present day here, how have you been occupying your time? Have you been watching anything?
Well, my fiance was watching Tiger King. I could only stomach one episode of that, so I had to shut it down. Because like the last couple of guys that have been on, they've talked about it being in Oklahoma City. So I actually did recognize some stuff too when I was watching, and I kind of just laughed at because being in Oklahoma City, what's going on there. It's a little bit backwards, but it's still a pretty nice place. So maybe I'll try to get those last few episodes in, but. I've been watching a lot of 30 for 30. I just watched the one on Michael Vick. What a crazy story that is.
Yeah.
It still is to this day.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's surreal to think that he went from such a superstar quarterback. All of a sudden he was in jail, and then just his rebound, the way he was able to reinvent himself, and the fact that he's continuing with that is very impressive. For him. And then actually earlier today, before we got on call, I was watching a story about Ben Johnson at the Olympics when he ran 9.79. So pretty cool stories, and trying to stay busy and stay in the sports world because I kind of miss it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the crazy things about that Ben Johnson story, I don't know if they touched on it in the special, but I don't know if you remember that race and who won it, but I believe Carl Lewis won that one, right?
Yep.
And guess who tested positive for steroids after?
Weird.
Yeah. It's
right.
Yeah. So that's kind of a part in history people don't want or choose to remember, is like, yeah, when Ben Johnson was saying, well, everybody's doing it, he was right. Like, everyone was doing it.
Yeah, there's just so many of those times, right? Like in sports, that a lot of those guys, it was acceptable behind the scenes, and you can watch any sports documentary you want. You can go through all the different sports, and at some point there was always some kind of drug, steroid scandal that many groups, many teams, many players were doing. So it's not surprising being in the sporting world and then seeing that stuff, but it's funny the way that the general public takes it.
Yeah. Well, even Lance Armstrong, he obviously, I can't remember what the doc on him is, but again, that's another sports one that is just, I guess because we've lived through that whole progression through him being an absolute champion and then his downfall of cheating. Yeah, great stories. Another, I don't know if you've seen Long Shot on Netflix, but that's another good one.
I have not watched that one yet.
It's a short one. It's about 20 minutes, and it's about a guy in LA who gets arrested and accused of murder, and gets arrested, and his alibi is that he was at the Dodgers game. And I won't ruin it for you, but definitely watch it. But the way he gets vindicated and the way they prove that he was at the Dodgers game is just absolutely mind-blowing. I won't ruin it for you, but I think it's called Long Shot. It's 20 minutes. Definitely check it out.
Definitely check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's head on to some stories here. We got some questions from the fans, and one I've been asking all my guests is a good road story. I'm sure you have some, especially being over in, I think we touched a little bit on some of them when we looked at the photos of you playing overseas, but is there any one story that kind of sticks out?
Well, I won't touch on my time here in North America, but I'll talk about Germany. So
for sure,
I know it was one of my first road trips. We were going down to Ingolstadt, which was about 2.5 hours away from Mannheim in the south, 30 minutes away from Munich. At the time we went down was Oktoberfest, and we finished the game. Our whole team was going to be staying overnight in Ingolstadt and then going to Oktoberfest the next morning. And after the game, we won 4-2. Our coach is walking around the dressing room, and he's just kind of talking, and he's like, listen, guys that have never been to Oktoberfest, here's some advice. And he started kind of going through the list, and he got to one where he's like, okay, after about your 5th beer, so don't go outside. And some of the guys, because I think we had like 10 or 11 new guys at that time, were kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Like, why wouldn't you go outside?
Right.
And he's just like, it's something about the air that just hits you. And when it hits you, you're in a world of hurt. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, that's fine. And so the next day we get on the train. It's a regional train, and every little stop for half an hour, was just jamming. The people are getting on and they were jamming the train. And honestly, I've never seen that many people get on a train before, but it was completely jammed. It almost seemed like the entire country had just stopped and everybody was going to Oktoberfest. And so we walk into this tent, which really it's not a tent. It's just a giant building with tables everywhere and stuff hanging from the roof. And we walk in through the doors, and I look to my right, and there's a guy that stands on one of the picnic tables, if you will. And he's got his stein that's completely full, and he puts it in his teeth, right? And then he stands up, and he pulls his arms open like this, and he chugs the entire stein without hands. And I look to my teammates, and I'm like, oh my, this is how we're going to go. So I'm now nervous. I'm like, hey, I don't even know what I'm about to get myself into. Like, these beers for Oktoberfest they're big. They're a liter each.
Wow.
And so we go sit down as a team, and we decide to play a game because, all athletes think they're invincible. And it was your first sip. You have to drink so much that when you tilt the stein over onto its handle, no beer can come out the top.
Okay.
If it splashes over, you have to buy the next round.
Okay, yeah.
So, like unsuspecting victims, all of us North American guys start doing that. And, before we know it, we're 4 liters, 5 liters in, 6 liters in, because we're just having a good time. There's people dancing, and it's a sight to behold, and it's a bucket list for sure.
Wow.
So anyway, I'm now feeling it because it's, 6 liters is a lot even for a guy my size. And I go to the bathroom, I come back, and I'm like, I need to get some air. And I remember
Oh. We may have lost you, Sean. Well, so far in this live stream to have our first technical glitch with Sean Bell. Well, I'll see if I can get Sean to get back on to finish up his story. But one of my previous guests is Mike Penhollow of the Boston Bruins, and he wasn't able to make it on the show today. He's got a lot going on Boston on the East Coast, but we talk about Boston accents and how one guy can do it really well and the other guy, or this guy, can't do it really well. So let's throw to that, and I'll see if I can get Sean Bell back on the line here. Last photo, I remember watching this game actually.
Oh, Conor McGregor.
But when you were in the corner, the broadcast camera kept panning to Conor, and you were always there. So someone snagged a photo of you and Conor.
Yeah, Steve Babineau took that photo.
Oh, Babs. I know Babs.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Steve and Brian. Yeah,
Steve and Brian. Yeah.
So he looks like he's got a righty and a lefty there. What's he doing with the sticks?
So those sticks he picked up, there was a youth game that was going on before. So like all the sticks are like lined up with their hockey bags and everything. And then Conor spotted him and he's like, oh, I need some sticks. So he's like, yeah, just grabbing them. He's like banging them through like the thing, and just getting like fans riled up. And like it was really cool because he was just embracing the moment. And it was definitely one of the cooler things. And like it was an adrenaline rush. Like that game flew by.
It was pretty. Did he see the selling? Like, did he actually see it in person, or did you see that?
You'd have to ask him exactly.
Okay.
But you can have him on next episode, maybe.
Hey, man.
Yeah,
come on.
Notorious.
When you're in Edmonton next, come on over.
Come on over. Honestly, yeah, he'd probably love to be on your show. That guy, he's a man of the people. Like.
How has your Boston accent progressed?
Oh, it's pretty good.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Yeah? Hit me with some Boston
My favorite line is always, hey, how are ya?
That's pretty good.
No, like everyone just says, hey, how are ya? And every time. And I'm just like,
I love it, and I'll just say, I'll be, hey, how are you? Well, it doesn't matter where I'm at. I'll be in China, I'll be in Prague, I'll be in Dublin, I'll be wherever.
Yeah.
And I'll just hit him with a, hey, how are you? I think it's my favorite Boston expression.
Yeah.
And it's not even an expression, it's just a normal thing.
Yeah.
Any other words you want me to say?
Some dunks. There's got to be some dunks references.
So I was over at Dunkin' the other day. I was there with my buddy Charlie. Charlie's like, hey, you should get one of these. And I'm like, I don't need one of those, kid. And he's like, yeah, you do. And I said, all right. So I drank the coffee and we moved on. That's all we did. All right. I don't know if that's Boston or what that is.
Oh, wow.
But it was fun. I had fun doing that.
Yeah, that was good. I tried some Boston slang at the end of my episode on TD Garden. Link down below.
It's TD Garden.
TD Garden.
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 It's garden.
Garden?
Garden.
Like you're saying God? Garden?
God.
God?
God.
Garden? The garden?
That was really good. Do it again.
The garden?
That's
the
garden. Yeah, that's pretty good.
I don't know.
No,
I'm really horrible.
I like that one.
But I tried some slang on
Vote
on
here
the internet,
to
but-
see who had the better Boston accent.
The garden.
The garden.
The garden.
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 You gotta say it right. Garden. It's
Garden.
right here. Garden. Like
Garden.
you're squeezing your.
Garden.
Yeah, squeeze a little.
Garden.
That's terrible.
All right, let's just jump into it. All right, Sean, we lost you for a second, but we got you back online.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
That's all right. Let's continue on. You were talking about being nervous, and I think you're about to step outside.
Okay, so yeah, I had gone to the bathroom and I'm like, okay, I need to go outside. So finally I walk out of the doors and there's this massive hill and there's people kind of laying there, kind of just hanging out. And so I'm like, okay, I just need to get some sleep. I'm going to pass out maybe. Like I just need to shake this off because I'm not feeling very well. So I kind of go off into like the bushes and I'm laying there. I make myself a little bed. And I set my alarm because I know that I need to get up and I need to shake the cobwebs free and get back in and continue partying. So I end up, passing out and I get woken up by the cops. And the cops have got their nightsticks out and they're kind of poking me to see if I'm alive. And I wake up and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm alive. My alarm's going off and I brush myself off and I end up going back inside the party. And, the time frame that I was gone was basically an hour. And the difference that I saw my teammates in from where I left to rejoin the party was on a completely different level. It looked like there were souls gone. There was empty looks. So I'm walking around and one of my teammates, finds me. He's like, Belzy, where have you been? Like, we've needed you for this whole time. And, he's like, we got problems. And I'm like, what's going on? And, we ended up meeting up with another team, which was Augsburg. And I actually had a couple buddies that I played with in Tri-City. And he's like, I don't like this one guy on their team. And I'm mad and he wants to fight me. And he's like, come with me. And I'm like, I don't want to go over there to fight another hockey team, let alone players that I know.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you're coming with me. And so I'm like, whatever. So I'm just going to go talk to my buddies. And I end up walking over and I see my buddies and I start chatting. And as we're chatting, because his wife was there too, and we're chatting, and all of a sudden I see, like out of the corner of my eye, one of my teammates running across a table and jumps with his arm to a pile of players, which was basically like a scrum that you would see not in like any other game, and just tackles everybody. And I'm like, this is outrageous. Like, guys, like, let's just, enough. Everybody's been drinking. So we kind of break this whole thing up.
Yeah.
And, we're kind of back to normal. We're laughing, having a good time. And it's time to catch the train, and we got to catch the train to get back to Mannheim, and it's a 2.5 hour trip.
Oh wow.
And we get outside and we're running towards the train station, and I remember looking back, and then all of a sudden one of our players, Dennis Seidenberg's brother Yannick, he's all of a sudden in a fight, and I'm like, what is going on? And I'm like, why are we doing this right now? So I'm like, Yanni, we got to go. And all of a sudden cops come flying over and they tackle Yannick Seidenberg.
Oh no.
And Yannick is like, he's losing his mind, and him and the cop stand up and they look at each other, and he's like, Seidenberg? And he's like, hey, what's up? And they both start laughing and having a great time. And also he's like, hey, get to your train, get to your train.
Oh no.
And I'm like, so we end up getting to our train, and it was a mess. And there was 2 or 3 guys that ended up missing the train. They had to take cabs back from Munich to Mannheim, which is like 500 euros. It was one of the funniest trips like I've ever been on in my entire life.
Wow. Well, tonight we've had Mark Messier speakeasies in New York. We've had record-breaking tornadoes in OKC. And then we got massive brawls trying to catch trains in Europe, and then the cop recognizes them. Like,
yeah,
oh, man.
It's a different world out there, that's for sure.
That's awesome. Hey, man, before I lose you again, just want to say, hey, thanks for coming on the show this year. It was a blast having you coming in the studio, and to be honest, you told some great stories. Had a lot of feedback on players, using your stories as an example of playing in Europe and expanding your mind in terms of like where you can end up playing hockey. So I think that obviously a lot of players that you deal with are NHL mindseted, and hearing stories like that leave some options out there for players that the dream doesn't have to live and die at the NHL. You can give it a shot, but if it doesn't work, you can expand your experience, go overseas, and have life-changing experiences like getting in a massive bar brawl in Europe.
Passing out on a hill in Europe and trying to catch a train. Yeah, with language you don't understand.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Exactly.
But yeah. Hey, Matt, thanks again for joining, being very patient, and joining me on my kind of season finale here.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks. Take her easy, eh?
Take care. Bye.
Awesome. All right, that was Sean Bell with perhaps the story of the night. All right, let's get to some prize giveaways. Now I'm going to throw it over to my good friend Joe Messina at the Second String Leather Company to announce the winners. Up for grabs were the Second String Leather Company t-shirt, as well as the awesome leather bag. Second String Leather Company, of course, makes one of a kind leather goods out of repurposed goalie equipment. Followers submitted questions and named their favorite rink on my social channels. Make sure you head over and follow along on @_the_Rinks. And if you haven't already, head over there and follow along. I'll also be posting updates as the season goes along. We've got a lot of developments with the potentially new rink in Calgary and the new rink in Seattle. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Joe and to announce our winners.
Hi, this is Joe Messina from Second String Leather Company. This week from Rinks Around the League, we're going to be giving away 2 free gifts to 2 lucky contestants that signed up through Instagram and the Twitter account from Rinks Around the League. The first one is going to be The Real Peterman. He submitted his top rink in the league, which was the Staples Center. He's going to be winning a Second String Leather Company bathroom bag. The second winner on Twitter, The Real Mr. Brain, he's going to be winning a Second String Leather Company t-shirt. His favorite rink was the Northland Coliseum. So again, thanks for joining in this entire hockey season. Season number 2's coming to an end. Let's go.
All right. Thanks, Joe, for announcing our winners. I'll quickly go through some Q&As of some questions that were asked of me, those winners, if you're watching online, feel free to DM me and give me your address so I can mail those out to you. And I just want to quickly end today's show by answering some fan questions. Let's see here. We had some fan questions real quick. All right, went off. Dustin_Sals, my good friend Dustin on Instagram. What happened to the Oilers, Derek? So when they wrapped up the season at Rexall Place. They actually removed the derrick pretty much right after, maybe a month or two after. And actually, we followed the lowering, de-installing of the derrick, and they actually shipped it on the back of a flatbed trailer, and they shipped it out to Sherwood Park to a storage facility. And as far as I know, that's where it still is. It very well may have moved from that location, but as the last time that I've seen the derrick, it was in a storage facility out in Sherwood Park. Now, why they don't have it in Rogers Place, I've given reasons of budget and space. Like in today's current situation, I can see why budget would be concerned, but back a few years ago, it would have been nice for them to spend money on. If you watch my episode on Rogers Place, I talk about how budget and space, they were worried about space, but other rinks do it. Nashville, Dallas, who else? Vegas. There's a lot in San Jose. There's lots of teams in the league that actually hold it in the roof, and they have state-of-the-art projections and speakers. So that's I think they can do it if they really wanted to. So Dustin, that's where it is. Robocourt asks, what was my job that I had with the Oilers when I worked for the Oilers? So I was manager of video production for 5 seasons, and I had a staff of about 5 or 6. There was 3 videographers, Tom Gazzola, Jessica, who was kind of a community reporter / Oilers reporter. So I had a group of staff that I worked with, and my job was, I did a lot of video work still, and I went on the road and traveled with the team, but my main role was taking care of the staff, scheduling, making sure content was posted on time, and working with the sponsorship team to produce the content that you see on OilersTV.com. So that's what I did back with the Oilers. Now, Menzel_17 asked, if the playoffs were happening, excuse me, who would you want to win the cup? Well, the Oilers, obviously. Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Like, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm pretty vocal. Kind of give OEG the gears now and again for reasons. But the reason why I love for the Oilers to win the cup is for the training staff, the medical staff, the team that are actually working really in conjunction with the team. Harry, Langer, TD Forrest. There's a lot of people who have worked with the team for a very long time, and I just wish they would have success. Those guys work tireless hours behind the scenes, and yeah, if and when they hoist that cup, I'll definitely be looking out for those guys, because those guys have been slugging out in the trenches for a long time. So I really hope the Oilers would win. Nick3202 asks, do you agree that the horn at the United Center sounded way better before they put it in the rafters? Now, Nick, I don't know if I could actually speak to that, because every time I've gone to United Center, I'm either down below underneath the rafters or underneath the bleachers with the team, or I'm up in the media box. So when I hear the horn, it's probably not the full effect as if I would hear it in the lower bowl as a fan. So I can't really speak to that, but I do know that my good friend and co-sponsor, Famous Goal Horns on Twitter, they'll be able to answer that question. So Famous Goal Horns, if you're watching, Nick3202 has a question for you. At Fins and Isles, how long have you been watching hockey? So I am 40 years old. So I've been watching hockey for a long time, and I can't really remember the first time I watched, but I do remember the first episode that I watched, or first game, one of the first ones. We actually watched on a black and white TV that was about this size, and we didn't have cable or satellite back then. old rabbit ears. I think our television station was out on Lloydminster, so that was how we used to watch hockey back in the day. So like in today's day with HD, with these massive screens, watching games is a real treat. So anyways, so I wanted to answer those questions from fans real quick. Now, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with me and watching this kind of wrap up live stream of season 2 of Rinks Around the League. I want to send a special shout out for my friends at Second String Leather Company for coming on board and helping me this year. They took a chance on this little show, and I want to thank them sincerely for their support throughout the past season. Also, the faceoff.net, they've been able to help me out with some of the graphics and some of the dimensions and statistics around scoreboards in the NHL. Make sure to check them out online, and also Famous Goal Horns on Twitter. They were provided me all of the goal horns and video montages that I used for the goal horn trivia for my guests on the show. It was really entertaining, and as Sean Bell mentioned earlier, I think he's the only one that went 5 for 5. So he's we'll put him on the leaderboard. Anyways, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at _the Rinks. Thanks again to my guests, Tom Gazzola, Gene Principe, Sean Bell, and Ryan Dietrich. Take care, Penzi, out there in Boston. Let's hope hockey is back in its whatever form it takes during the summer. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride this year. I hope you are watching and learned something and had some fun along with me. But even tonight, with that minor glitch with Sean Bell, I think it ran pretty smoothly. So who knows? Maybe we'll do another one of these in the summer to catch up. Maybe if this season, the NHL season gets back on board, we'll do another one to catch up. But until then, I had some couple comments about season 3. Season 3, we'll see how it goes. My goal is to have to reach monetization on YouTube. So I've basically captured the hours, but I just need the subscribers. I'm at 765. So if I can get that 1,000 subscriber mark on YouTube, I think I definitely will look forward to doing another season. So stay tuned on Twitter and Instagram for updates. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll get through this together. Again, thanks for watching, everybody.